Hello, and welcome back to Misshelved, your bi-weekly dose of bookstore love. We've gotten through the winter, the sun is back, and this episode of Misshelved is the perfect pairing for an afternoon walk. Our independent bookseller for today is the one and only Meg Wasmer.
Hey, this is Meg Wasmer. I'm the co-owner of Copper Dog Books in Beverly, Massachusetts.
Meg is one of my favorite book-selling folks. She's been in the industry for ages and ended up buying the bookstore she was working at a few years ago. Copper Dog is amazing, and I highly recommend you visit her when you can. Her partner for today's episode is the incredible Martha Wells.
Hi, I'm Martha Wells. I'm the writer of the Murderbot Diaries, the Books of the Raxura, and lots of other stuff.
Settle in as Meg talks to Martha, one of her all-time favorite authors, about the power of the Murderbot series and the joy of reading for fun.
I personally came into Murderbot last year. All I read for 2019 was Tor.com novellas because I was trying to diversify and not just read straight white boys with swords and fantasy.
Yeah.
So I started 2019 and was like, okay, I'm going to read this sci-fi book, but I hadn't read sci-fi that wasn't Star Wars Expanded Universe and fell into Murderbot and sucked me right into sci-fi. When you wrote Murderbot, did you expect it to be like this bridge into sci-fi for people, or was that just kind of a happy accident?
That was really a happy accident because when I'm writing something, I don't really think a lot about what the impact of it is going to be. I hope people like it, and that's about as far as my thinking goes. I wasn't expecting it to go over as well as it did. I started writing All Systems Red while it was still finishing up the end of The Harbors of the Sun, which was the last novel in the Books of the Raxura series. And so I just, I was hoping it would be a little novella. Their little books are so cute. So that's kind of mostly what I wanted, the imprint had been around for about a year at that time. They had published Kaya Shanti Wilson and some other people, and the actual hard copies of the books are so cute, and I wanted a cute little book too. I was gonna write this novella, and hopefully it would come out the same time, maybe, or close to Harbors of the Sun, and maybe it would help, the two books would kind of help get some more attention. So I was really not expecting the reception it got, not at all.
It's wild because, I love talking to people about it. As a bookseller, it's something that I hand sell a lot. I sell it a lot to parents of teenagers with autism because as an autistic adult, I've never read something that resonated as deeply with my flavor of weird, my personal quirks as Murderbot. This was such a big thing for me becoming a person that was setting boundaries of no, I'm really not comfortable with that, and it's okay. It's fun to hand sell.
Yeah, I think for me, when I was writing it, I think I was coming off a long, long time in my life where I'd had to force myself to do things. And, because I've never been formally diagnosed with anything, but I do have symptoms of ADHD and I have some pretty bad social anxiety. I think I probably was very close to having agoraphobia before I went to college. And I basically forced myself to go to an out-of-town college because I kind of had the feeling that if I didn't, I would, just not do anything or try to take the opportunity not to do anything. When you're used to kind of forcing yourself past your boundaries to be able to go to school, go to work, and whatever, I think it was kind of, from me, kind of reclaiming my right to be able to say no to stuff that I didn't really want to do. There's a lot of things that kind of came out in All Systems Red, especially, that I hadn't really thought about before, but somehow I just ended up pouring all my issues out onto the page. And I think that's what's let a lot of people identify with it like that.
There's that great NPR quote of, I think it's, "We're all a little Murderbot." I think it's so true because I've read so many articles. Tor.com shared one that was their experience as a trans person and how Murderbot resonated with them.
That was really cool.
So cool because I'll talk to people about it and it's this amazing, I think it's the best of nerd culture. It's something that pulls so many people together, and it's this weird shared experience. We're not sharing the same thing or necessarily the same experience, but we're seeing ourselves in Murderbot. And I think when I hand sell All Systems Red or any of the books, I tend to describe them as books about making your way in a world that's not made for you, and how it pulls. I think they do exactly what science fiction is supposed to do in bringing people together with this experience. It's not about autism or your transition, but we all kind of get to share our otherness, and it brings us all together.
All those things where the people are seeing in it are things that produce a lot of just anxiety and how you're presenting yourself to the world and how the world is thinking about you and just everything. And I think that's the link between what people see in it, because it's a very common experience. And I don't think people quite realize how common an experience different forms of anxiety are.
I agree with that. I'm on Twitter a lot now, and people being like, oh my gosh, this thing made me really anxious, or this experience I had. And to be able to be like, oh, I feel that too. I didn't know that was a thing that anyone besides me felt. Like, I feel like the world is so big and getting so small.
Yeah, I think people have a tendency, we have a tendency to think that this thing that bothers us, we're the only ones who are bothered by it, and everyone else is kind of sailing along just happily, not having any problems at all during the day. And it's not true. And so it does kind of help in that respect too, to realize that, yeah, you're hardly the only person who's having this problem.
With Fugitive Telemetry, you went back to novella. Was that intentional, or did you just want to do something a little shorter, or was that just the length of the story that you needed to tell?
Well, my secret in writing is very few things I do are intentional. I was actually trying to write another novel, and it just was not getting off the ground. I'd finished Network Effect, and Network Effect took about 18 months to write, which is unusual for me because usually a novel would take about 12 months at most. But with each Murderbot novella, the first one only took a month to write. And each one after that took about 3 to 4 months. And they've each been getting more complicated and harder to write. And so the book was kind of the cherry on that sundae, where it was like incredibly complicated, incredibly hard to write. The first like 30 or 40,000 words just took me forever. So I had finished it, and I'd finished, I think, a short story that I'd been working on for about a year. And I was like, well, I need to start another Murderbot book. And I tried to start a novel that was a sequel to Network Effect, and it just wouldn't happen. And I was just kind of like, why can't I do anything? Why is this not working? And I finally thought, I'm just going to start writing a Murderbot story and not really think about where it's going, and I'm just going to start something. And I started Murderbot standing in a hallway with a dead body in Preservation Station. And that's how Fugitive Telemetry started. So I was able to finish that. And it was a novella length story. It didn't intend to be, but that's what I wrote. So that's how that came about. And then kind of realizing like, well, I don't have to kind of lock myself into something set after Network Effect. I can go back and do a prequel. And that kind of freed up my imagination too.
There was a lot about Fugitive Telemetry I really liked. I really enjoyed that it is kind of a step back from Network Effect. So it feels like a little bit of a flashback episode. You kind of know, like, you don't know how the story will end, but you know that everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed watching Murderbot get to be Murderbot. There's a moment in it, I'm going to not be spoilery, that it mentions, I thought about this for like a week leading up. How do I talk about this one scene that I really loved? You've gotten to kind of follow Murderbot on its adventures, not really doing what it was programmed to do, learning to be not a sec unit. And then when it has that moment of, but I'm really good at this.
Yeah.
And doing really what it is meant to do. I just like the whole little novella. The whole thing works. I love that it's a murder mystery. I love that, like, it's not just a sci-fi story. You get to be on an adventure with Murderbot doing some Sherlock Holmesing.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I wanted. There's been a mystery element, I think, in each of the novellas in the book, but this was the first kind of full-on murder mystery. There's a bit in a flashback in Network Effect where it talks about working with station security. And I was kind of realizing that there's a story behind that. Because obviously, by that point, working with station security had become pretty easy for it. It was trusting them more. And I wanted to show how that relationship developed too. And so the murder mystery was a good vehicle for that.
It was beautifully done. It's just such a perfect little book. And I like knowing, like, the whodunit at the end was like, oh my gosh, not what I expected.
Well, cool.
So when the rest of the world gets to read Fugitive Telemetry, what do you think they should read next when they're done? When they have to wait like another year for their next Murderbot?
Well, if they're going to read my books, I see some people moving from Murderbot to the Bookseller Axur, which are very different. They're secondary world fantasy. There's no human characters. It's a fantasy world with shapeshifters and flying people. And there's magic, but it's most of the magic and technology is biological. But a lot of people like it, and it was a really, really fun series. Before Murderbot, it was probably the most fun thing I'd written, the most me thing I think I'd written, where I was trying to be completely just self-indulgent throughout the whole series. So they could try that. I know some people kind of bounce off it since their thing is more harder science fiction, in which I've never really seen Murderbot as hard science fiction. I've always seen it more as space opera, which is mostly what I read growing up. For other people's books, you know, if you, the Ancillary Justice trilogy by Ann Leckie, that's very much part of the inspiration for Murderbot. Kate Elliott has a new space opera series. Really recommend that. Susan Palmer has a couple of space opera-ish books about a character that finds, is basically, it's not really a repo man. He finds things that are stolen and returns them and finds lost things, kind of. And those are really interesting. I really like both those books.
I had never thought about Murderbot as space opera, and it's right, but it's so much harder sci-fi than I ever have actually read. I cut my teeth in like kind of grown-up book, real serious book reading in the Star Wars expanded universe. So for me, Murderbot is really hard sci-fi, but I know that that is not actually the case. It's not the deep stuff that I can't get into.
Yeah, it was funny because of the cover. When All Systems Red first came out, it got labeled as robot horror, which I thought was really funny. But that was kind of intentional with the cover. When you look at the cover of All Systems Red, it's the very forbidding sec unit with the opaque helmet, you know, it's meant to inspire fear. And as soon as you open the cover, there's Murderbot, you know, all out there. And you can't be afraid of it anymore.
They're really good covers. Jamie Jones did such an outstanding job because it pulls you in. There's a story just waiting to be told. Good stuff.
Those are incredible. And the Subterranean Illustrated Edition is coming up. Tommy Arnold did the art for that. He did the covers of Gideon the Ninth and Harrow the Ninth. Those are beautiful. And the art he did for it is just gorgeous. It's a different take, but it's very cool.
They are beautifully done. I missed out on the Subterranean book, and I'm bumming about it. But there's like no bad Murderbot art.
Yeah.
The little Wired story with Murderbot doesn't look anything like, you know, the cover Murderbot. It's much rounder, and it's got all of the good swirly colors in it.
Yes. That's a good one too.
Just the colors in it. Oh, I in full disclosure, I actually have a tattoo of the Wired Murderbot because I loved the colors in it so much.
Oh, cool.
Murderbot does such good art, like all of it.
Yeah, I've retweeted as much fan art when I find it occasionally on Twitter. It's always so much fun. Fan art is like the best thing.
Oh, the little animation of Murderbot's pulse weapon in its arm, I remember you shared. That one was wicked good, and the music video was solid.
The music video was incredible. That was the best thing.
I've delighted in finding kind of I have a ton of new internet friends just because we keep showing up in your Twitter feed every time you share something. I'm friends with a bookseller, and I think she's in Idaho, but she posts about her and her daughter reading Murderbots, so now we're internet friends.
Well, that's cool. That's really cool.
Coming back to that, Murderbot seems to have unintentionally built a community. I don't know if you set out to be like, this is a book that's going to bring people together.
Oh, I had no earthly idea. I mean, you always kind of hope your book will have a fandom, but you usually expect it's going to be like 10 people at most,
Are you working on anything that isn't Murderbot that you want to talk about?
Yeah, actually, I'm working on a new fantasy novel that I can't really say much more because we've made the deal, but the contract's not signed yet. I think the publisher will probably going to want to announce it themselves, but it's going to be a new fantasy novel, and there will be more Murderbot. I'll probably be mostly writing Murderbot in the second half of 2021, so it'll be a bit before it comes out.
I feel like you've done a whole bunch of Murderbot all in a row, so like kind of stepping back and visiting something else must be exciting and fun.
You need a break every so often. I don't like to do the same things over and over again. I like to kind of binge and then move on. It is better to kind of have a break and keep it fresh, at least for me.
I always worry. I don't know, my overactive empathy. Authors that I love make things that I love, and I want more of them, but I don't want to just suck all the Murderbot out of you so that Murderbot's no fun and you never want a Murderbot again.
Well, it's really hard for me to push myself to do it because it is really difficult. One of the reasons why it's so difficult is because of Murderbot's point of view. Usually with a human character, they can only know certain things. They can only get in so much information. And Murderbot's ability to be connected to all these different systems and all these cameras and all that stuff, you have to take that into account when you're doing any kind of logistics of the fight scenes. It makes it that much more complex. And it would be easy to like say, oh, Murderbot can't access anything right now, so it's just it. It's like, well, yeah, I can't do that because that's cheating. It just makes a lot of the logistics of the series very complex. And then the emotional undercurrent of everything is pretty complicated too. There's just a lot of thinking to be done and planning and everything with each part of it. So that's why it's kind of complicated in some ways that a book about just a human character or even an alien character without that kind of ability to access things would be.
I guess, like, as a reader, like, it reads so flawlessly that I never, like, you tried really hard because it just flows so nicely. Like,
well, it doesn't write flawlessly, let's put it that way. I tend to, and I usually don't do this, I tend to have to, with Murderbot, 10 or 20,000 words and then go back and cut most of that out and start again at least once.
Oh gosh.
With Network Effect, which was, I think it was 110,000 words total around that. It was basically that over and over again. Write 10,000 words, write 20,000 words, cut it all back out and start again. It's not a great way to do it because I start getting confused. I have bits and pieces I want to save, and it's hard to get those in and remember everything you wanted to do, and then you have trouble remembering what you wrote and what you didn't write. I much prefer, my usual method with a novel is just basically start from the starting point and kind of build as I go and work slowly, do revision and everything, but not have to like just throw chunks away. It's kind of a difficult task. I'm sure other people would be able to do it a lot better, but this is just the way I kind of bumble along with it.
It works. The result's phenomenal. I hope that your fantasy book comes out a little easier for you.
So far, it has been. It has been. It's been kind of nice just doing something where, the person can't see everything that's going on for miles around. It's nice to stick to a singular point of view.
I look forward to it. It'll be nice to kind of go home to some fantasy once that one comes out.
It's interesting that you were not a science fiction writer from early on, because so many of the people I talked to were science fiction and fantasy fans from basically the time they could read. I guess it's a slightly different perspective.
I've always been a genre reader, but it had always been intellectual property titles. Kevin J. Anderson taught me how to read. I was always kind of like a Star Wars person. Alan Dean Foster's Alien novelization. Actually, my copy's in 2 pieces because I read it to death. I had a great teacher who pivoted me. He was like, but what if you read some original content? His roots had been very much more fantasy heavy. So he was like, here's David Eddings. And then I was a fantasy reader. Coming back to sci-fi in original content has been really, really wild to me. Like, I loved Murderbot. I've loved Corey J. White's Void Witch books, which I never would have picked up. I might have loved Gideon and Harrow, but I might have been like, but they're in space. And it was such a hard pivot for me to go from, okay, I'm going to read this book that happens in space, but I'm not sure how I'm going to feel about it, to this is a book that has like completely pivoted my reading habits. It was unexpected. Good, like a good unexpected, but it was a surprise.
Yeah, there's just so much great stuff coming out now. And actually, when I was growing up, I used to read a lot of tie-ins also, because my parents wouldn't take me to that many movies. And so I would read the novelizations of movies. I actually read the Star Wars novelization before I got to see Star Wars. And then I got to read a lot of Star Trek books too.
When I came into Star Wars, which was truly my first fandom, it was a really weird time because I came into Star Wars between trilogies. The original trilogy was still kind of on syndication. You'd catch marathons of it on Fox on the weekends. The prequels weren't even a dream yet. My dad brought me home the audiobook of Timothy Zahn's first book and was like, it was Star Wars. I don't know if it's any good, but I thought you'd like it. So that was kind of my first foray into sci-fi as something that wasn't film. Up until then, I'd done a lot of like just kind of traditional fiction, but I don't know. I love a good tie-in. I like that you get to see more than just what you get to see on film.
That's the best part, and that's why I enjoyed the Star Wars, the expanded universe also, and the Star Trek. I'm glad more things are doing that now, is putting original stories in the canon, basically, like the Stargate Atlantis books. I really like those. Stargates. There's so many good ones out there.
And kind of like on an industry level for me, Minecraft has been huge for turning young gamers into young readers.
Oh yeah, it's a gateway drug, basically. It's a gateway right into regular science fiction and fantasy.
A lot of parents are like, I want my kid to read. They play too many video games. And I'm kind of like, video games are fine. Also, let your children have fun.
Yeah.
Here's this Minecraft book. And then, like, I was at a book fair, and I always bring a Minecraft book to my book fair things, and I'll bring a stack of them, and you'll watch these kids that are like, oh, I'm at book fair. Book fair is the worst day of the year. Them and their friends will all find it, and you get these little impromptu Minecraft book clubs where they're all like, oh my god, I found a Minecraft book.
It's amazing how giving kids books they want to read gets them into reading.
It's shocking.
It's astonishing. It's shocking.
But I think there's a stigma that like reading has to be like enriching, and I'm like, just feel joy, guys. Like, it's okay.
I really think it's just like writing. Any amount of writing, whatever you're writing about, whether you're writing fanfic or essays or whatever, does improve your writing ability. Any amount of reading improves your reading ability. It's kind of the same thing.
I see a lot of what gets assigned in schools, and I'm always like, how about we let the kids read what they want a little bit? Like, I know we have to talk about these important literatures, but what if we did a little more free reading? What if we were like, okay, you slogged through Ethan Frome. Read something that you just want to read.
Yeah.
And I feel like so much of education, I get like teaching to curriculum and whatnot, but it sucks the joy out of it. And I feel like you get these high school and college students that forget that reading's fun.
Yeah. If you can read a 500-page Harry Potter or Star Wars book, then you can read anything. It's not, it's not like they're easier or anything.
They're not, and like the world building is so rich, and there are things that like make you fire off your willing suspension of disbelief, just the same as, if you're reading historical fiction.
It's exciting to the imagination. And there's so much good middle grade and YA out there right now. So much more. I grew up in the 70s mostly, and we didn't have anywhere near this kind of huge cornucopia of books for kids with, different perspectives and different voices and all these different authors. I don't know why denying kids access to all that incredible stuff is supposed to help them. I don't get that.
I was at one of my schools. I do a summer reading book fair for a high school, and the teachers won't assign YA for summer reading. So I have one town that's classics, like you're reading Austen and Jack London and Dickens, and then my community is like, oh no, we're reading YA, and we're going hard into YA, and like there are just these two very different schools of what kids are reading.
Yeah, and a lot of those books, the classics, were not intended for kids. There's plenty of time to get to them, pre-college, I think, or in college.
I wish there was more of a building a culture of reading as joy, because it is a joyful thing. I went to my first WorldCon in Dublin, but to be able to be in a room with my literary loving peers, it's such a huge community boost to have this thing that you love and to be able to access it. WorldCon was a bucket list thing for me because I used to read George R. R. Martin's Not a Blog long before there was a TV show, and he'd be like, I'm at WorldCon this year. And I'm like, I'm not cool enough to go to WorldCon.
It's like, oh, sure you are.
Well, and I was like, I love Dublin, so even if I'm not cool enough to go to WorldCon, there are enough distilleries that I can keep myself entertained.
Yeah, well, you'll be in Dublin, so it'll be fine. Yeah, Dublin was gorgeous. Ireland was gorgeous.
It is such a good city. I loved that it's such a safe city.
It's one of those places, it's kind of like New Zealand. It's so beautiful, it just doesn't translate well to film.
I've been really lucky. I've been there a couple times in the past few years. It always brings something new. Like you always find something new and beautiful there. Out of time, which is sad because I'm having so much fun. But we should wrap up. I guess if you would like to find me on the internet, I am at Copper Dog Books on all of my social media. If you'd like good professional bookseller, if you would like snarky, less professional bookseller, I am Meg Pyre on Twitter. And the store's website is copperdogbooks.com if you need me to give you books.
Let's see. My website is marthawells.com. I'm also on Twitter, MarthaWells1, and then I'm on Dreamwith Journal at marthawells.dreamwith.org.
Thank you so much for listening.
If you liked today's episode, don't forget to rate, subscribe, and tell a friend about Misshelved. To keep up to date with all of our bookish hijinks, follow us at Misshelved Pod on Twitter and Instagram. If you really like what happens here, and we hope you do, head over to our Patreon page to help fund this podcast and our Misshelved newsletter. Thank you for listening, and as always, happy reading.